And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because that's just Barclays Bank. That's just
Right.
London.
And we know how that works too. If they paid 450 million in fines, it's nowhere close to the profits they made by breaking these rules.
Exactly. That's a very good point. Because banks always plead down, pay their fine, which is a lot less than they made in the first place, and never have to admit guilt because of the plea deal, right? It's just the way this works, and then everyone avoids a trial. The banks have never been at fault, etc. But when you have a situation like the Canadian Competition Bureau is investigating the Royal Bank of Scotland, which has banks operating in Canada, okay, or branches operating in Canada. Right. Now, for a Canadian authority to investigate a foreign bank that has branches in Canada, well, they're trying to say that this is a sovereignty issue, that it's like it has nothing to do with Canada, even though we have branches here, right? Because what happens if these banks are paying fines in all over the world for this same transgression, right? So the banks are trying to stop the bleeding and limit it to one country. And London is the cornerstone of this, because banks tend to play all their games in London because they have the fewest regulations.
That's what I was just going to say. The regulations there are very slim.
Yeah, they're almost.
Everybody tries to play catch up with them.
Yeah, they're almost non-existent, and that's why London is the banking capital of the world, because banks can do whatever they want. They can invent collateral. They can multiply collateralized assets based on fabricated collateral and everything.
Well, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like essentially the same thing that a criminal organization would do. They prop each other up. You don't have to, as long as you have the might to proclaim yourself. And this is what they seem to be doing. They're pretending, like you say, they're insolvent, and at the same time they get together and they're like, well, you pretend that you can lend money, and I'll pretend that I can borrow money from you. And meanwhile, neither of them should be lending any money, because both of them are probably insolvent.
Exactly. It's funny that you draw the parallel between the way criminal organizations are set up and how these banks are interacting together. Right, because if there's no difference in how they're structured, and there's no difference in how they behaved, then are banks really different than criminal organizations at this point? When you see the implications of what this LIBOR scandal really mean,
right?
It's just a story that I would encourage people to dig into. Do some research. I mean, it's huge and massive, and we cannot hope to present it in its multifaceted glory in this program with the time that we have. That's for sure.
No, but we wanted to talk about it, and I mean, I think it's important, and it's something that people need to do more than just listen to anybody talk about it for 5 minutes. You got to go out and do some research of your own, and read into this topic, because it's a big deal, and there is information out there right now, because it's kind of breached that that, like, every once in a while a story like this punctures through into the mainstream media, and it has to get some coverage. Most of it will be in the economics pages where people don't read, but this is big news.
It doesn't get
your analogy of the house of cards is the same thing as a criminal organization, where people lean on each other and it becomes a system of favors, and that's what these people are doing for each other.
Yeah, it's huge, and I think the salient point that we're trying to make here is that is just in terms of Canada's impact here, irregardless of who's losing the money and who's making the money. The fact that Canada's sovereignty is being challenged in this way, as though a bank that's operating in our country, we don't have the right to investigate it because it doesn't originate in this country. This is an issue of sovereignty, pure and simple. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a curious position for an economy, a global economy that knows that everything is interconnected like that, and then hides behind national borders when it comes to different issues like this.
Whatever happened to globalism?
Yeah.
I guess capital doesn't experience borders, but authority that regulates capital does.
Yeah.
See what I mean? Like, why would our government be placed, and the people that rely on our government be placed at such a disadvantage when it comes to challenging capital?
Mm-hmm. So I wonder, we'll have to keep an eye on this and see where it goes as far as especially the Canadian link as well.
And
see
now,
where it plays out.
And if anyone's interested and they do start following the LIBOR scandal, one thing that you're going to encounter is that the right-wing media is going to present this as a victimless crime. It's just not like that.
It's not true.
No, it's not. This any financial crime has victims. It's just not like a murder. You can see the blood spatters that come out of the gun that the murderer was holding. But the thing is, when you squeeze a country or a company or a pension fund or a group of people, you squeeze them financially. Well, then somewhere down the line, somewhere down the ladder, there's someone that can't afford a healthy diet, someone that can't afford a comfortable retirement, someone that can't afford proper medical care. And this is where a problem comes in. This is where the victims are. So these financial crimes, they are not victimless crimes. White-collar crime has victims. And you know what? A murderer with a gun, like a buddy that walked into the theater and shot a bunch of Batman fans there. You know what I mean? Because I guess he thought in his mind he was the Joker. Well, how many did he take out? 12 injured?
I think there was
30?
12 people dead and 52 injured or something like that.
Well, LIBOR affects billions of people. How many of those people will suffer negative health impacts or death because of it? I don't know, but it's going to be a hell of a lot more than 12. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And the reason I bring that up again is because it's all over the news. You can't even go to a website or flip on the CBC without hearing about that.
It's one of these cases where I guess it's true. The pen is mightier than the sword in the sense that someone goes and stabs or shoots somebody, it makes a great media story and they love to show that, and it gets reactions, emotional reactions from people, as it should. Yeah. But then when it comes to something like this, where some banker sits down and writes down some rules on a piece of paper, then really breaks all those rules on a completely different level, and it affects everyone, but we can't necessarily connect all the dots. That we just we miss the actual crime.
Right.
But there is serious crime going on
because
here.
It's mass murder, but it's not direct. It's indirect mass murder. You know what I mean? You bilk the pension fund. You're killing people. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's LIBOR. That's I guess we kind of accomplished our goal of breaking that down and tying it into Canadian politics, because it's a sovereignty issue all of a sudden. Like, let's follow this story, especially how it applies to whether or not the Canadian Competition Bureau is allowed to go ahead with an investigation and can subpoena records and stuff like that, right? This is very, very important. And if this thing goes as big as it might be able to go, provided that the courts don't get in the way of the investigation and allow the interested authorities to bring banks to justice, we could see a huge movement in terms of shaping how banks behave internationally. And that would be a very welcome development, because as the world economy teeters on a precipice in terms of the derivatives bubble and the sovereign debt bubble that we're trying to wrestle with right now, think Europe, okay? It will be very, very interesting to see governments try to get a handle on how to curb the behavior of speculators and banks.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's something maybe we should close on saying here. Isn't it curious how there seems to be a lack of response from the Harper government, as they love to be called? We know the Canadian Competition Bureau is talking about it, but the government itself has failed to come out with any sort of statement about this. And I think we should keep our eye on that as well. See what Stephen Harper and all of his buddies have to say about this eventually.
Absolutely.
If they say anything at all, because it's more likely that they don't say anything.
Well, yeah. See,
they'd rather meet and talk about gun violence in Toronto and link it up with immigration.
Yeah, they're too busy demonizing people that stand in the way of pipelines and people of color, and resisting gun control. Yeah, and it's a sad thing, but you're not going to see the Harper government do anything to curtail the reckless behavior of international banks and speculators. They will be
Absolutely
allowed,
not.
as far as the Harper government is concerned, they should be allowed to continue to bilk the world economy.
It is the economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, in London it is for sure. Like a massive amount of the GDP in Great Britain is dependent upon the financial industry and its milking of the world economy.
Well, what do you say we go to another track before we call it quits and call 31 done?
Let's do it, and we'll come back after this, Pavement, Elevate Me Later, from the Crooked Rain album, and we'll wrap up episode 31. Thanks, Mike. Here we go.
Sounds good.
And that was Pavement with Elevate Me Later. How's it going, Mike?
So, we kind of we went right around the wheel tonight. I think we talked about a little bit of everything. We managed to talk about how the right-wing media is portraying some of the concerns that are happening in Canada. We've talked about the relationship between big business and government, and we've looked at how Stephen Harper is spinning the issue of gun violence. And all in all, I think when you look at all of these issues and other ones that we talked about tonight, I think what we really need to conclude is that very often, whenever the Conservatives put out a position, you always have to question it, because their ulterior motives are so easy to see. And once we get a handle on these and we understand where they're coming from, we're just better enabled to discuss these issues with people. And I mean that not on the radio show, I mean out in the street. When we talk to these people, let's not let people get away with saying that the Harper government is fiscally responsible because they cut a bunch of border guards and then gut the Department of Fisheries and Oceans.
Right.
That is not fiscally responsible.